The following program is brought to you live from the Assembly Chamber in Albany, where Governor Hugh Carey will address a joint session of the New York State Senate and Assembly with his third annual legislative message.
Will the Chamber please come to order? Sergeant at Arms, would you please contain the guests in the chamber? This joint session of the New York State Legislature will come to order. Ladies and gentlemen, His Excellency, the Governor of the State of New York.
Lieutenant Governor Krupsak, Speaker of the Assembly, Mr. Steingut, Majority Leader of the Senate, Mr. Anderson, Controller Levitt, Attorney General Lefkowitz, members of the Judiciary, members of the honorable bodies, and ladies and gentlemen of the State of New York. It seems a lifetime ago I appeared in this great chamber to tell you that the days of wine and roses were over. You responded, and one would think there was not a bottle or a bush left in New York State. Now I appear before your honorable bodies today to add coffee to the list. Once again, I have the honor of presenting my annual message to the legislature of the State of New York. Once again, it is my responsibility to report to your honorable bodies on the condition of our great state and ask your assistance and cooperation to better that condition through sound, proper, and prudent administration of government in the year before us. As governor, I first appeared before you, burdened with the knowledge of the strenuous course that lay ahead. I spoke of the harsh facts of a troubled future in words befitting the situation, but alien to my instincts and contrary to the hopes of those we represent. But you responded, and despite the fact that those first months saw visited upon us as a state every conceivable turmoil and test, you responded, and by your actions, we survived. A year ago today, I reported once again. By that day, you and I were no longer defenseless and vulnerable in the face of unexpected events. Little now could occur that we were not able, indeed willing, to confront in what I believe will always be remembered as a classic example of two branches of government working not always in perfect harmony, but with a common commitment for the good of the people. Much was yet to be done. Great sacrifices were still before us. But recalling the history of our nation in a year of celebration, the theme of our forebears was adopted for our own, that the harder the conflict, the more glorious would be the triumph. And so it is today. While triumph certainly is a word too grand and final, I am here today to tell you that we have seen the worst of times. Together, we have met the test and made our mark. To a state that had no credit, now credit is given. To agencies of government that were crumbling, stability and strength have been restored. For cities and communities that had no hope or future, constructive plans can now be made. And I am confident that in the months and years ahead, national policy will be premised on the models created out of the imagination and ingenuity of the people of New York in their hour of trial. I've said before, and I welcome the chance to say it again, to whatever extent history will judge our work, to whatever extent that which has been done marks a turning point in New York, The success is yours on both sides of the aisle. To those members of the Assembly and the Senate who are new to these halls, I extend my welcome and commend to you the efforts and diligence of your returning colleagues, especially the leadership of both chambers. As a product of the legislative branch of government, I can attest a legislature cannot meet its obligations to the electorate in the absence of strong and dedicated leadership. New York's legislature has not only met its obligations, but under the guidance of the Speaker of the Assembly and the leadership of the Senate and their respective staffs, it has saved the state of New York from fiscal collapse, preserved the integrity of our government, and brought honor and recognition upon itself. Your contributions to public policy over the next 2 years will be measured against these achievements. It is one thing to note the progress we have made, another to decide the path to follow in the future. Now is the time to address new questions and rethink old assumptions. Do the people of the state of New York seek the continuance of an ever-growing government where ability is measured by bigness? Do they wish a structure that produces expenditure levels guaranteed to exceed available revenues? I believe not, for it is a path of the past to ask people to pay for bigger government through larger deductions from their paychecks. We must tell the people, for they are waiting to hear, that no new taxes will be placed upon the citizens of New York State. Do the people of the state of New York really want bureaucracies immune from change, payments made from programs regardless of their effectiveness or changing conditions, simply because strong vested interests align themselves against common sense moderation? I believe not, for it is a path of the past to allow a powerful few to dictate to the many what portion of their income will be for their family and what portion will be sent to Albany. We must tell the people, for they are waiting to hear, that when circumstances change, government programs can contract. Do the people of New York hold the belief that the measure of a well-managed government is one that succeeds in building marble monuments to itself at their expense and that of their children through debt arranged without their permission? I believe not, and if some ever did, they cannot now. We must tell the people, for they are waiting to hear, that we are their servants and wish to incur nothing in their name for our own honor and glory. These are the paths of the past, which I hope we can leave, and together walk a path of progress, a path prudent but productive, a path restrained by our limited resources, but directed to a more prosperous future for our state. For if there's one thing I believe we can say for the people of New York, it is that they are tired of government that continues to take more and more from them with no measurable difference in their lives. It does no one good to see government towers in the clouds, while on the streets below, corporations that create jobs are either departing or deciding not to come to our state to conduct their business. People do not wish welfare, they want work. They do not wish unemployment, they want the security of jobs. They want no more from Albany than to be relieved from the burdens of a government that has spent beyond its means and beyond the necessities of essential programs. These beliefs mark the path of progress for New York. After all we have been through, we must give the signal, loud and clear, not only to our citizens, but to those whom we wish to attract, that we have chosen a new path. To begin, the state must start with the cornerstone of less taxation. The burden of our citizens is heavier than anywhere in America. That must end, and I propose to start the process today. We must work together this year to design and enact a personal income tax reduction in excess of $200 million. This action is long overdue. I suggest we do this first by eliminating, not simply suspending, the personal income tax surcharge, and thus return over $100 million to the paychecks of our citizens. Let this be a message, not only to New Yorkers, but to those who would come to our state, that we are serious. Our commitment is toward less burdens for all and toward economic progress. Further, I propose personal income tax relief amounting to $100 million annually for our middle and lower income taxpayers, those who have carried the heavy burden, those most exposed to economic risk. Let this be our message of true change. While surcharges may have been suspended before, time has come to finally break the ever-upward New York personal income tax trend. This trend should be broken slowly and with care, but the trend must be broken and broken now. But I stress that this new direction can be followed only if our governmental expenditures are pared to a manageable size. These tax benefits will require corresponding sacrifices and adjustments in many governmental programs now seriously overextended. Recently, I reported to the people that we face difficult budgetary decisions in the year ahead, but we have worked long and hard since then, and our course has been chosen. We have made our decisions on behalf of the people, and we will commend them to you for your deliberations. The executive budget I will present to you on January 18 will reflect the twin commitments of reducing both the size of government and its obligations while bringing tax relief and economic hope. To the extent that we attempt to reduce taxes while ignoring the need to reduce the size and cost of government, we fail. To the extent we try to keep our feet on contradictory paths, our attempts will be open to ridicule and question. Now we begin our break with the past for the ultimate benefit of all, or admit our inability to do so and consign New York to the backwaters of our country's economic life. For, as in all things in life, government, like mankind, cannot have it both ways. And as we break with the past, we must begin to think with a multi-year perspective. As we begin to reduce the tax burden in this state, I believe the right decision is to start with the people. If we begin this year to fundamentally reshape and reduce the cost and scope of government, future additional tax reductions will be possible for business and industry as well as the people. But to plan for these future tax cuts means we must be firm now in establishing a strong foundation of expenditure reductions that will continue into the future. At the same time, we must be vigilant that our actions do not transfer burdens to our localities. I will be discussing with you steps that can be taken to assure this new direction is followed throughout the state and will not lead to increases in local taxes. We must begin to view this state and all its subdivisions as one fiscal family. This combination of state and local governments now accounts for over $30 billion in spending, only $10 billion of which is attributable to our state. $20 billion of taxing and spending is at the local level. If we are to find a new direction for New York as a whole, simply shifting the burdens from one level of government to another is not the answer. This entire creature called state and local government, from the myriad departments and divisions and agencies and boards and mandates and functions, must be looked at with a broad and independent perspective. But the system of local spending as well must be thoroughly analyzed. Therefore, I propose the establishment of a panel on the future government in New York. This panel will have a broad and comprehensive mandate. It will examine the structure and organization of state governments. It will look at the combination of state and local government relationships and spending. It will complete a major review of state and local taxation. In addition, the panel will aid us in considering the need for a constitutional convention, a question before the voters this fall. In its deliberation, the panel will highlight what issues are of a constitutional nature and therefore appropriate for a constitutional convention. As I said before, the beginning of measurable tax relief is the cornerstone of economic development. When added to actions to contain public costs, this will provide the foundation to build our future and create jobs for our people. We can do more. We can take steps to generate the capital activity to provide vital resources for development. First, I will propose in the executive budget an accelerated capital construction program for transportation. This program will double the amount of highway contracts from $340 million this year to nearly $700 million next year, creating some 20,000 jobs. Second, The Port Authority of New York and New Jersey will support $120 million for mass transportation projects in New York State. Used to provide the match against the federal capital program, this $120 million, made possible by recent traffic toll increases, can support $600 million program for the revitalization and improvement of our mass transportation. Finally, the Department of Environmental Conservation will soon complete the process of committing over $1 billion in state and federal matching funds for the construction of local sewage treatment plants and related capital facilities. These steps, while important, fall short of providing us with the capital resources this state future requires. One of the most historic and legitimate functions of government is the undertaking of capital investment necessary for business and industry to flourish. The private sector can produce goods, but cannot rebuild and maintain the roads and bridges to bring their commerce to market. The private sector cannot alone rescue the historic ocean and lake ports of our state. It cannot prevent the deterioration of the rail beds upon which its goods are carried. These are the legitimate functions of government, which must provide the services and facilities for the public welfare. The base for economic development, which means the present and future availability of jobs for our citizens, relies on government meeting its obligations. Responsibility for economic development is shared between the public and private sectors of our economy. We cannot expect business and industry to come to our state if we are not willing to invest our fair share. The Constitution of our state provides a mechanism of a referendum whereby the people of the state may choose to undertake investments in their future. It is among the abuses of past years that the purposes of full faith and credit were distorted, with their proceeds used to finance general fund deficits. It is among the abuses of prior years that the wisdom of constitutional protection was denied by inappropriate reliance on moral obligation debt. Though that is a path that we shall not travel again, neither can we allow these mistakes to prevent us from making prudent investments in the future of the state. Therefore, I will recommend to you that we put before the citizens of our state an opportunity for a modest investment in New York's future. I will propose to your honorable bodies that a $750 million capital development bond issue be placed upon the ballot next November, and trust the will and wisdom of the people for its passage. To assure the people of our determination to employ these funds judiciously, I will recommend a legislative limitation of $250 million on the issuance of these bonds in any single year. If approved, this full-faith bond issue will not be for the expansion of bureaucracy nor the construction of buildings to hold more government workers. It will not be a fiscal sleight of hand for budget balancing purposes. The budget I propose will not rely in any way on the availability of these revenues. In addition to the investment of capital, other efforts to promote the development of jobs and improve the business climate must be continued. Central to our efforts to ensure New York State's economic vitality is an adequate and economical energy supply, and we will work closely with the new government in Washington to assure that New York's problems and potential is addressed at the highest level. Through the coalition of Northeastern governors, we have been working with President-elect and Congress to further the proposal for a regional energy and development corporation that emerged from the Saratoga Conference. I note with pleasure the formation of a coordinate coalition of Northeastern state legislators, and I look forward to working with its leadership in our common commitment. We must do all we can at the state level. First, I intend to develop, with your aid, a comprehensive energy policy for New York State. I will seek your support for specific energy management measures to be included in an energy conservation plan. Our message to OPEC is loud and clear. Raise your prices and we lower our consumption. Last year, you gave first passage to the proposed constitutional amendment, raising the borrowing authority, expanding the powers of the Job Development Authority. I urge second passage of these amendments for submission to the voters this year. I will recommend changes in the Job Incentive Program to return to production idle industrial and commercial facilities, and I will propose extension of the program's corporate franchise tax benefits. We must continue our effort to expand the market for New York's produce, thereby preserving the family farm. With the assistance of the Lieutenant Governor, we are furthering the encouragement of New York's farms and commercial wineries. I will propose reform of the estate tax on farms and small businesses. Under this reform, the family farm will not have to be sold or removed from farming to pay estate taxes. In addition, I have recently created a special task force on recurrent flood problems in the southern tier to develop long-range solutions to the flooding problems of this part of our state. Another important component of our economic development efforts is recreation and tourism. We must continue support for the state's extensive recreational facilities as exemplified by our improvement of the competitive sports areas on Mount von Hoevenberg and Whiteface Mountain to be used in the 1980 Winter Olympics. New York is proud and honored to have been chosen as the location for the Olympics. As a sponsor state, we will see to it that our actions are timely and the games are successfully held. The economic development programs that I have presented today, from tax reduction to cost containment, from capital investment to job development, are essential to the future development of our economy. I assure you that the jobs created by our actions will go, like the tax surcharge elimination, to all our citizens, regardless of race, sex, creed, or nationality. To assure this, I have issued an executive order on contract compliance requiring affirmative action programs for those who want to do business with the state of New York. In the weeks ahead, I will propose legislation and initiate administrative actions to make significant changes in the organization of state government. To facilitate the state's ability to improve services to the mentally disabled, I ask your cooperation in developing and approving legislation which will establish 2 new independent agencies, an Office for Developmental Disabilities and an Office for Alcoholism and Substance Abuse. In the area of mental health, I will propose legislation to alter the methods of providing state financial support for community services to allow localities greater participation. To improve the state's ability to assure the highest quality care for the mentally disabled who must remain in the institutions, I will propose legislation to establish a state commission on the quality of care, to be the permanent advocate for the rights of the mentally disabled, to better regulate programs of care for children and adults who do not reside in their homes. I propose to realign the Board of Social Welfare responsibilities to provide more effective oversight. In the area of health care, to better control the spiraling cost of medical services, we will improve rate setting and centralize management of the fraud and abuse activities of the Departments of Health and Social Services into one unit in order to increase the effectiveness of our efforts to curb abuses among Medicaid providers, including Medicaid mills. An additional area of major reorganization I will propose is in probation and parole services. We should plan for the integration of these various services to assure economy and efficiency. I look forward to working with you on these matters and in all other ways to improve our government and its services. My proposals are detailed in the complete text of this message and will be further outlined in the executive budget and special messages that I will be sending to you. We will be attending what you have so well begun, the matters of court reform, the improvement of our criminal justice system, the improvement of protection for senior citizens from attacks upon their lives, and indeed, a better system of juvenile justice. But in sum, I would hope that we do not lose sight of the essence of this message. Together, we have succeeded in preserving our state and its localities from fiscal chaos, and by so doing, we have preserved our very form of government. For while others may have the right to monitor our work, no outside force has found it necessary to take from the people of New York their right and ability to govern themselves. On that most important score, we have met the test, and it is my view, strongly and firmly held, that the state of our state today, while strained, is such that we can prepare to embark on a new direction, to ready ourselves for participation in the nation's economic recovery, to provide tax relief for the citizens who have carried our burdens so long, to provide jobs and economic security for those who have lived at risk, and to bring the size and scope of this government within the boundaries of the resources available to it. But on this important score, we have yet to be fully tested, and that, I suggest, is the challenge of the legislative year before us. For what was the purpose of the endless hours and stresses we have experienced? Did we accomplish these things merely to pick up where we left off, to return to those practices that led us to the brink of insolvency and potential loss of effective government? Are we to say that having passed through the eye of the storm, we have learned nothing about the charts that led us on a most perilous course? And can we possibly suggest to the people, after all of this, that if they will just be patient a while longer, each of us attends to our favorite concerns, they will ultimately have their relief? I believe not, for that is not the message the people wish to hear. They have a higher expectation of us, and we must respond to that expectation. We must show that we have that special strength that comes from the sheer act of survival, that we have proven not only that we are fit, but now we are ready to carefully plan and pursue a course leading to the economic fulfillment of this state, ready to adopt those measures that have the ability to save a dollar in every person's take-home pay, that provide jobs in the private sector, those measures that add to the economic security of the family. As their elected representatives and leaders, we must prove to them, and prove it now, that we are not weaker from the tests we have been through, but we are indeed wiser. And so, it is a new direction I ask you to take, not one that is simply called less government, but one that is more responsive to our situation, not one that reveres formulas as untouchable, giving them a blind life of their own, but one that recognizes there are new conditions and just who it is who pays the bills. A government not afraid to ask for an investment in the future, but one that has every right to ask because it has successfully emerged from the crucible, its books are clean, and its budget is in balance. Today, then, as a guest in your chamber, I come to ask that we work shoulder to shoulder to move on that path that is best for our people. I ask so that those who survive us and ultimately will judge us will be able to recount our efforts as leading to a new and better life for our state, that they will be able to say of us that for ages and ages hence, two roads diverged in a wood, and we took the one less traveled by, and that has made all the difference. Ladies and gentlemen of this legislature, through the year 1977, let us walk together, and we shall make the difference. Thank you.
Members, please take their chairs.